My name's Marcus Hale. I'm 38, and before this job, I spent 9 years in the U.S. Army, including 2 tours overseas. I know what it means to serve, to sacrifice, to show up when it's hard and keep showing up when no one thanks you for it. That's probably why I lasted this long at Farentech. 6 years in, not a single promotion, not a bonus that didn't have strings attached. But I stayed loyal, because that's what you do, right? You put your head down, prove your worth, and trust that someone's keeping score. That was the lie I told myself. Right up until that meeting, it was supposed to be a routine check-in with my director. I had prepped for days, numbers, project outcomes, team metrics. I walked in hoping for a real conversation about growth, about the raise I'd asked for 3 times before. Instead, she leaned back in her chair like she was already bored and said one line. "You've hit your band cap, no room to move unless you change roles." I remember blinking. That's all I could do at first. Not because I didn't understand, but because it was so rehearsed. So easy for her. Like my work didn't even register. I asked if there were any paths forward, training, management tracks, something. She just shrugged and said the budget didn't allow for lateral promotions this quarter. But later that same day, I saw it. An all-hands email went out, congratulating 3 new hires, all junior engineers, not even out of probation, and each one got a signing bonus, 10 grand. I found out because one of them bragged about it in the break room, loudly, laughing like it was no big deal. He said they threw in relocation too, even though he'd moved 5 blocks. I sat at my desk, staring at my screen, trying not to let the anger show. I had trained 2 of those guys, built half the systems they now relied on. My fingerprints were on every major release this company had shipped since 2019. And now I was being told I was too expensive to promote, but not valuable enough to reward. There's a kind of betrayal that doesn't explode. It just settles, heavy, like a coat you can't take off. That's what that day felt like. Not a slap, a slow, quiet erasure. I left the meeting that morning feeling like I'd aged a decade in 30 minutes. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was tired, bone-deep tired. The kind of tired that comes from realizing the mission you thought you were serving never saw you as part of the victory. Just another tool, replaceable, forgotten, the second someone newer and cheaper came along. And that's when something cracked in me. Not loudly, not all at once, but enough. Enough to make me start digging. Because if they weren't going to see me, I'd make damn sure they'd hear me. At first I thought maybe I was overreacting. Everyone has off days, right? But over the next few weeks, something didn't sit right. The younger guys, new to the unit, were walking around with this lightness, like they knew they were winning the game and didn't need to pretend otherwise. One of them mentioned getting a retention bonus after just 6 months. I pretended not to hear it, but it echoed. Meanwhile, guys I'd served with for years were packing up and disappearing with barely a goodbye. No retirement ceremony, no shout-out over comms, just gone, quiet like shame. And those of us who stayed, we stopped talking as much. The break room used to buzz with stories and jokes. Now it felt like a waiting room. I started to notice the assignments shifting too. More grunt work falling on the vets, while the newer names got posted to cushy liaison roles or daytime gigs. I've seen patterns before. In combat, you learn to read subtle shifts fast. Something was moving beneath the surface. I could feel it. One night, after chow, I stayed late at my desk, pulled up old rosters, bonus memos, deployment logs. Nothing that looked like a smoking gun at first. Just small things, but stacked together, they formed a shape I couldn't unsee. I cross-checked training records with payout approvals, found 3 cases where brand new recruits were paid more up front than senior NCOs who had saved lives downrange. Then I remembered something, a weird email from logistics about budget caps last year. It had been copied to my inbox by mistake. I searched for it, then keywords like incentive, restructure, compensation model. The results were thin but suggestive, enough to raise the hair on my arms. I didn't know what I was looking for yet, but I knew this wasn't random. The bonuses, the silence, the slow bleed of experience. It all pointed to something intentional, something quiet. I leaned back in my chair, heart steady but my mind already racing. If I was going to uncover this, I'd need more than instinct. I'd need proof. I was sorting through archived emails, chasing leads that didn't go anywhere when I saw it. Subject line was boring, just said allocation check-in. I almost skipped it, but then I saw the sender, finance, And for some reason, my name was on the thread. The message wasn't meant for me. That much was clear. It looked like someone had accidentally copied me when forwarding attachments. I clicked anyway, scrolled halfway down before my eyes locked on one line buried in a reply chain. Don't worry about him. He's too loyal to leave. Use him. I didn't move for a full minute, just sat there, staring at that sentence. My ears started ringing, the words repeated in my head, louder each time. Too loyal to leave. Use him. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't vague. It was a strategy. Every time I stayed late, every time I picked up the slack without complaint, every time I told myself they'd notice. They had noticed, just not in the way I hoped. I wasn't invisible. I was targeted. My stomach turned. I felt a cold rush sweep through my body, followed by something heavier. It wasn't sadness. It was betrayal. Sharp, fast, personal. Like someone had taken everything I believed about work, about duty, about loyalty, and flipped it. The pain hit first, then the rage. I stood up too fast, knocking over my chair. The air felt thin in the office, too quiet. I walked out, needing space, needing to breathe, but I couldn't stop seeing that line in my head. I'd given this place my discipline, my focus, my backbone. They saw it as a weakness to exploit. That changed everything. I wasn't digging for curiosity anymore. This was war now, and I knew where to aim. His name was Marcus. We hadn't spoken in over a year, not since he rotated out to work civilian side on base infrastructure, but I remembered the time I'd vouched for him during a mess with a corrupted mission log, kept his clearance clean. He owed me. I wasn't above calling in that debt. I sent a message, vague enough to stay safe, but clear enough that he'd know it mattered. He agreed to meet. Quiet spot off post. An old diner with more dust than customers. I got there early. Marcus walked in like he was still checking corners, eyes scanning everything before sitting down. He didn't ask questions, just waited. I told him about the email, the bonuses, the pattern. His face didn't change much, but when I mentioned the loyalty quote, his jaw clenched. He said nothing for a few seconds, then nodded once. He still had partial admin access to the personnel data system. Not official, not sanctioned, but left over from a software project he never fully got off. He could pull records, bonus logs, salary bands, internal review notes. It wouldn't be pretty, and it wouldn't be traceable if I didn't touch anything. I told him I didn't need it handed to me, just needed to be pointed in the right direction. A file misfiled, a shared folder no one polices. Something I could plausibly stumble on. He smiled, thin and cautious, told me to give him 2 days. We shook hands quickly under the table, like rookies trading contraband. I didn't feel heroic, just determined. As I walked out, I felt it again, that quiet shift in momentum. This wasn't just damage control anymore. I was moving forward. With Marcus watching my six, I had a shot at blowing this wide open. I was up before the sun, the sky still dark enough to feel like night. The base was silent, except for the hum of security lights and distant hum of maintenance crews. I sat alone in the admin room, logged in under a routine pretext, palms sweating. My heart thudded so loud, I swore it echoed in the vents. I navigated to the shared drives, trying not to look suspicious, even though no one was watching. Third directory down, tucked between supply forms and transport manifests, it sat there. Audit temp result. My mouse hovered over it for a second. Then I clicked. The file opened slowly, almost like it knew it carried weight. What I saw made my chest tighten. Rows and rows of names, dates, salaries, comparison metrics across years and ranks. The veterans, men and women, who had been through fire and back, were consistently underpaid by margins that hit 30, 35, even 40%. It wasn't random. It was patterned, clean, calculated. Beside it sat another file. Internal memo logs. I opened one and nearly slammed the desk with my fist. The phrase jumped out at me like a cold slap. Retention cost optimization. I read the full paragraph. Targeted comp caps. Loyalty exploitation. Suppression initiatives labeled as cost savings. They had turned people's commitment into a liability to be managed. My hands were shaking. Not with fear, with rage. The betrayal was systematic. This wasn't one bad call or a single greedy officer. This was policy. I sat there staring at the screen, barely blinking. Something deep inside cracked open. Not sadness, not even anger anymore, just clarity. They saw us as inventory, replaceable, containable, loyal to a fault. They banked on our silence. But they had miscalculated one thing. I had nothing left to lose, and now I had proof. I sat at my desk, fingers resting on the keyboard, staring at the draft email. No threats, no accusations, just the truth. I had written it 4 times already. Deleted it 3. The subject line stayed the same. Read this. That was all it needed. I attached the file. Redacted names, stripped ranks, just roles, pay bands, and percentages. I added a short note. If you've been here more than 2 years, odds are you're being paid less than someone new. Here's the proof. Do what you want with it. I read it twice, took a breath, and hit send. 42 people. Every vet I could find still active. Men and women who'd served long, kept quiet longer. My hand lingered over the mouse like I could still undo it. But it was done. The silence broke right there. The first reply came in under 10 minutes. Then another, and another. My phone lit up with messages. You serious? Is this real? Holy hell. Some were angry, some just stunned. A few didn't say anything at all, just a period. A signal that they saw it. I walked the hallway like a ghost. Nothing looked different, but everything had shifted. Eyes met mine differently. Some nodded slow, like they finally saw me. Others avoided my gaze, unsure what it meant. Word was spreading. You could feel it in the air. By afternoon, small groups were gathering near the barracks and the gym, phones in hand, voices low but firm. One guy I barely knew walked by me, patted my shoulder once, and kept walking. I didn't need thanks. That wasn't the point. The point was motion. For the first time in years, something moved. And it wasn't from the top down. It was us. Quiet voices, shared outrage. 42 people who had taken hits and stayed standing. Now they knew they weren't alone. And that changed everything. The cafe was half empty when I walked in. Quiet jazz played from a corner speaker, and the smell of roasted beans lingered in the air. She was already there, sitting rigid in a corner booth, hands folded tight, eyes locked on the door like she was waiting for a storm. I walked over and sat down across from her. No handshake, no small talk. I slid the manila folder across the table. Inside were the salary audits, the retention memos, and a clean compensation model built from current market data. I watched her glance at the folder, but she didn't touch it. She started in fast, said this was reckless, said I'd misunderstood the bigger picture. I let her talk. Every excuse came with clipped words and a tighter jaw. When she finally stopped, I leaned in and spoke calm. This is what you did. This is what it cost. And here's how you fix it. Her nostrils flared. She called it blackmail. I said it was a choice. Either fix the pay or face the legal fallout. She reached for her coffee, but didn't drink it. Her eyes flicked to the window, then back to me. I told her I wasn't asking for money. I wasn't here to negotiate for myself. I was here for the 42. Silence sat between us like another person at the table. She looked down, not at the folder, just away, like the truth was too bright to stare at directly. I waited. When she finally spoke, her voice was lower. Said she'd have to take it to legal. I told her she had 4 days. Then it goes public. Every outlet, every department. Her face cracked for half a second, then it hardened again. I stood and left. No handshake, no farewell. Just a simple fact laid on the table. I wasn't bluffing. The fight had already begun. And I was done asking for permission. It didn't take long. By the end of that week, the entire base felt different. You could sense it in the way people spoke, in how they looked at each other. Quiet conversations turned into side huddles. Laptops opened in break rooms comparing numbers. Nobody whispered anymore. One morning, 3 veteran sergeants submitted their resignations. No drama, just quiet exits with bags packed and heads high. A captain walked out the next day. He left his ID badge on the desk and never looked back. Leadership scrambled. Emails came flying in from command. HR tried to calm the water, but it was too late. The damage was done. The people knew. The trust was broken. Some stayed, but they started asking hard questions. Why is my rank paid less than his? Why is a new recruit getting a bonus I never saw? From my small apartment 2 towns over, I watched it unfold, my inbox filled with messages. Some were simple, just thank you. Others told me what they saw. A meeting here, a heated hallway debate there. The system wasn't just bending, it was starting to crack. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. I felt like what I did mattered, not because it was loud, but because it lit a fire no one could smother. The truth had weight. And once dropped, it didn't land quiet. It hit like thunder. The message came late on a Thursday. A buddy from the base sent a screenshot. It was a draft of the new pay structure. Clean, transparent, tiered by role and years of service. It looked familiar, almost too familiar. It was my plan, the one I laid out during that coffee shop standoff. They hadn't said my name, didn't need to. I wasn't in the room, but my voice was there. Quiet, woven into policy. The same system that tried to bury me was now standing on the structure I built. That night, I sat by the window, coffee in hand, watching the sky fade to dusk. It didn't feel like triumph. It felt like peace. A strange, gentle kind of peace. Like setting something heavy down after carrying it too long. Emails started coming in from other units, then from nonprofits, then private firms. Some wanted advice, some offered jobs. One message stood out. It was from a small veterans advocacy group. No suits, no fluff. Just people who believed in building better from the inside. I met with them the next week, talked values, talked mission. By the end of the meeting, I knew. This wasn't just the next job. It was the right one. A place where I wouldn't have to fight just to be seen. So I signed, packed my things, closed the chapter without bitterness. Because it wasn't revenge that mattered. It was the rebuild, the quiet shift that proved we could hold the line and still walk away stronger. And as I started that new role, I carried one thing with me. Not anger, not pride, just purpose. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that endures. After everything settled, I kept thinking about the quiet ones. The techs in the back rooms, the admin clerks, the field mechanics. People who kept things running but never made the highlight reels. So I built something for them. A small private space online. No names, no ranks. Just a login, a forum, and a simple rule. Help each other. It started slow. 12 users in the first week. By the end of the month, there were over 100. Some from the military, others from defense contractors. All with stories like mine. Missed promotions, pay gaps, silent battles no one saw. They shared numbers, negotiation scripts, warning signs to look for. They started winning. Every Friday, I posted a guide. Sometimes it was data, sometimes just a story. How to ask the right questions. What phrases meant trouble. One week it was about how to read between the lines in a job offer. The next, it was how to track changes in policy without raising red flags. Messages began to roll in. One from a satellite tech in Arizona. Said he used my guide to get a $12,000 bump. Another from a logistics officer in Virginia. She said she finally understood her worth. Said she didn't feel small anymore. Those messages hit harder than any title I ever wore. We weren't loud. We weren't angry. We were building a map for people like us, so they could move with confidence, not fear, so they wouldn't have to wait for someone else to stand up first. Legacy isn't always a monument. Sometimes it's a folder passed in silence, a link shared quietly between shifts, a whispered thank you that travels further than anyone sees. And if even one person feels less alone, if one person speaks up who wouldn't have, that's enough. That's the kind of work that lasts. That's how change lives on.